Do you ever feel distant from God, as if the divine presence is just out of reach? What if finding that connection wasn't about grand miracles, but the everyday choices we make to open our hearts and minds? Evelyn was the kind of person who lived her life on autopilot. Between managing a demanding job at a marketing firm and keeping up with family obligations, her days were a blur of meetings, emails, and errands. She was efficient, respected, and successful, but deep inside she felt hollow. Evelyn grew up attending church with her family, and she always found peace in those moments of stillness. But as life grew busier, her connection to God faded into the background. Sunday services became occasional, prayers grew infrequent, and her faith felt more like a habit than a relationship. One Friday evening, after another exhausting week, Evelyn stopped by a local cafe for coffee. The line was long, and as she waited, her phone buzzed with emails from her boss. Frustrated, she sighed heavily. A man in front of her turned around and gave her a small, knowing smile. "Rough day?" he asked. She nodded, surprised by the question. "Feels like every day is rough lately." The man smiled. "I know the feeling, but sometimes you have got to look up instead of forward. It's amazing what you might see." Evelyn glanced at him, confused, but before she could reply, it was his turn to order. He paid for his coffee and walked out, leaving her with a strange comment lingering in her mind. That night, Evelyn sat at her kitchen table, staring at her untouched dinner. For the first time in a long time, she felt a pang of guilt. She couldn't remember the last time she paused to reflect on her life. Her days were packed with tasks, but none of it felt meaningful. The following weekend, Evelyn's niece Emily asked her to join a local charity event. It was a cleanup drive at a nearby park, something Evelyn would usually decline because of her packed schedule. But this time she hesitated. The man's words at the cafe echoed in her mind. "Sometimes you've got to look up." Reluctantly, Evelyn agreed. At the park, she felt out of place at first. Everyone seemed so cheerful and connected, chatting as they picked up trash or planted new flowers. Evelyn worked quietly, keeping to herself. But as the hours passed, she noticed how something small, a shared laugh, a kind word, even a simple thank you, seemed to lift her mood. During a break, she struck up conversation with an older woman named Ruth. "This is a beautiful park," Evelyn remarked. Ruth smiled. "It is now. When I started volunteering here 10 years ago, it was abandoned and full of weeds. It took a lot of work to make it what it is today." Evelyn admired the woman's dedication. "Why do you do it? Spend so much time on something like this?" Ruth wiped her hands and looked at Evelyn. "Because it reminds me of the way God works in us. Sometimes life feels like a mess, a tangle of weeds and brokenness. But when we care for it, little by little, we can turn it into something beautiful. And it's not just for ourselves, it's for everyone who comes here." That evening, Evelyn walked through the park, now vibrant with flowers and greenery. She thought about Ruth's words and the man at the cafe. She realized that getting closer to God wasn't about dramatic revelations or sudden miracles. It was about choosing to open her heart to people, to moments, and to opportunities for gratitude and service. She started small, taking time to call her mother instead of texting, offering encouragement to a struggling coworker, volunteering more often with Emily. Each action felt like a tiny step towards something bigger, and for the first time in years, Evelyn felt a sense of peace she couldn't quite explain. What if getting closer to God isn't about searching far and wide, but about the small moments where we choose kindness, connection, and gratitude? Who in your life might need a helping hand, a kind word, or just your presence today?